Welcome to the Clarity Advisor Show, where you'll learn how to grow your team today. Join Ken Trupke and his guests as they discuss what works and doesn't work to grow your team in today's world. And now, your host, Ken Trupke.
Hello, and welcome to the Clarity Advisor Show. A question I get a lot is around the idea of micromanaging versus managing. And leaders tend to be very sensitive to being considered a micromanager. It's kind of the worst thing that you can be accused of these days in leadership is being a micromanager. And teammates can sometimes be quick to accuse you of being a micromanager because it tends to be a get out of jail free card. If you get accused of being a micromanager, you'll typically back off. So, what is micromanaging? For me, what I teach and coach and train on is that we want to have a what and a how. And it is absolutely the leader's prerogative, the leader's decision, the leader's role to determine the what. Now, you want to do that collaboratively, depending on the level of the person that you're leading. But if it's an experienced person, you're going to work with them to agree on the what. Now, maybe a very inexperienced person, you'll just tell them the what. But it's the leader's responsibility to define the what. What needs to happen? We need to have lunch today brought in. That's what needs to happen. Now, how is up to the person you're delegating this to or assigning this to. And that's where there can be confusion. I would say that micromanagement is when you tell people what you want and how you want it done. So let's stay with this lunch example. So I want lunch brought in at 12 o'clock. That's the what. Now, you can add in, I want lunch for 8 people, and I want you to get it from Panera. That's still all what? You still have not micromanaged. Now, what's the how then? Well, the how is I need to leave at 10:45. It's Michigan and it's snowing, so I need to start my car 5 minutes early so it gets warmed up. And then I need to take certain roads. Micromanaging would be if I said, I need lunch for 8 people in the conference room at noon. So far, so good. That's a what. And I'll need you to start your car at 10:40 so you can leave at 10:45. I want you to take Main Street, not South Street. That's the how. That's micromanagement. So as a leader, unless you're telling them exactly how, you're not micromanaging. You're just managing. It's okay to be very specific about the what. It's okay to say, I need it for 8 people. I want it from Panera and it needs to be here by noon. That's all in bounds. You're not micromanaging. So don't let people accuse you of micromanaging when you're not. Now, let's have a more businessy example. Let's say you say, I need you to have an overview of the project, a summary of the project done, written up by end of business on Thursday. Again, that's all what. If you just say, I need a summary for this project, that's okay. Maybe they understand that depending on the person you're delegating to, how long you've worked together, what your relationship is, that might be sufficient. The less experience or the less you've worked with that person, the more detail you might need to give. But as long as it's detail around what, you're not micromanaging. So you could say, I need to have a summary of the project in my inbox, not later than the end of business on Thursday. That's all still what? Now, if you said it needs to be 3 paragraphs and each paragraph needs to start with a statement and I want it in bullet, but like that's now you're into the how. Now that's how. Now you are actually micromanaging. But if you just say, I need something very specific by a very specific date, that's still just managing. That's still just leading. So why the confusion and why this accusation of micromanagement? Well, I would suggest that because it leads into the second part of this, which is accountability. What people push back on more than micromanagement in truth is accountability because most leaders aren't actually telling people how to do things. They're not actually micromanaging. What they are doing is having accountability. There's an expectation. I need this lunch on the conference room table by noon. I need this report in my inbox by end of business on Thursday. See, now somebody's accountable to that. And most people don't like to be accountable. We like to kind of get things done when we get them done. Most people judge themselves by their intentions and everyone else by their actions. But When you're the person getting things delegated to, your leader is going to judge you by your actions. Did you get lunch on the conference room table by noon? Did you have the report in my inbox by end of business Thursday? Yes or no? But people feel like, oh, you're micromanaging me, telling me the deadline. Well, no, they're just having some accountability and some expectation around that. So, and now within accountability, there's two kinds of accountability. You can have results based accountability, or you can have activity based accountability. And there's different reasons to do different ones. So let's give a sales example. If I have an expectation that you're going to make 30 sales calls a week, well, then that's a result, or I'm sorry, that's an activity-based metric because you can control that. The difference in general between activity and results is activity you control. You can control whether you do something or don't do something. The results you have less control over. So let's say we're trying to get appointments and we say, I want you to make 30 sales calls because I know it's about a 10-to-1 ratio. Every 10 calls gets us an appointment. I really need 3 appointments. So I want you to make 30 calls. Well, either a results-based accountability or an activity-based accountability can work here. We can say, I need you to make 30 calls because you control that. That's activity-based. I expect 3 calls, but I know you don't control whether or not you get 3 appointments out of that. But you do control whether you make 30 calls. So I'm going to hold you accountable to making the 30 calls. Again, we're still talking about what? There's no micromanagement here. There's just accountability. I didn't tell you when to make the calls. I didn't tell you what to say on the calls. Now, we might work through some of that, but that's not what I'm asking for right now. I'm just saying make your 30 calls. That's a very what request that has a very specific accountability to it. Now, somebody might say, hey, listen, my ratio is better than 10-to-1. So I can do 3 appointments in less than 10 calls. So just judge me on my results. Okay, that's fair. But now I need you to do 3 appointments. I need you to get 3 appointments. And if it takes you 50 calls, well, I'm judging you on results because that's what you said you wanted. So you can go either way. And as a leader, if the person you're delegating something to or tasking them with wants to say, hey, I'd rather have a results measure than an activity measure, that's okay. If you think that'll work, but just help them to understand that, okay, but now I'm holding you accountable to the result, not to the activities. You don't come to me and say, I only got 2 appointments. I know I said 3, but I only got 2, but I made 30 calls. Hey, we didn't agree you were going to make 30 calls anymore. We agreed you were going to get 3 appointments. There's still an accountability there. But that's where people tend to raise the flag and go, oh, now you're micromanaging me. You're telling me how many calls I got to make. Like, no. Do you want an activity-based or do you want a results-based? Now, sometimes it's not as clear or we don't have as much history to say, oh, there's this 10-to-1 ratio. If you make 30 calls, you'll get 3 appointments. So let's say it's a customer support project and you say, hey, my expectation is that you're going to respond to customer requests, whether they come in via email or maybe chat, that within 10 minutes, we're going to respond to those. We want our average response time to be less than 10 minutes. And then we also have this rating that we get after we do our customer service, that people leave us a 5-star review, right? They give this rating on how was this service. And maybe we're targeting a 4.8. Well, there's not as tight a link between if we have a 10-minute response rate, will we get a 4.8 average rating? I don't know. And so in that case, I think it's better to have, regardless of the experience of the person, it's better to have an activity-based metric because we can control that. We can control whether or not we respond in 10 minutes on average. We can't control what does the person we're helping say about us, whether they give us a 5-star or a 1-star. We don't necessarily control that. So to say, hey, don't worry about my response time, just worry about whether or not I hit a 5-star review or a 4.8. That's a little more risky. And probably as a leader, you don't even want to do that because it's going to it doesn't encourage the behavior you're looking for. The behavior you're looking for is fast response time. Now, we believe that leads to a higher rating, but it's not as directly linked as maybe the example of phone calls to appointments was directly linked. And then you might get something that's completely unrelated where you'd actually want to go to a results-based. Think of like a programmer or a software engineer where you say, listen, I need this feature shipped on Tuesday. You need to deploy this feature on Tuesday by noon. And the activity might be, did they work on it maybe 2 days a week, 2 hours a week, or 2 hours a day for the week. And it's not as clear that will the 2 hours a day add up to a feature ready to ship on Tuesday. So in this case, you might say, listen, I don't know what the activity needs to look like. I just know the result. So let's agree to a results-based accountability. I need this feature shipped on Tuesday. You do whatever it takes. I think it's roughly 2 hours a day, but it might be more, it might be less. I don't know. Doesn't matter. We're not measuring your activity. We're measuring your result. We have an accountability here on results, not on activity. And we'll get to the third piece of this puzzle when we come back from the break. You're with us here on the Clarity Advisors Show.
Is your business where you want it to be or on track to get there? Clarity Advisors helps business leaders improve communication and get your team aligned and engaged for greater success. We specialize in helping you streamline your sales and operating systems to improve efficiency and grow your profits. Call or text Ken at 616-822-2998 to have a complimentary 12-minute call to see what some clarity could do for you.
Okay, welcome back to the Clarity Advisors Show. Today we're talking about accountability and micromanagement. And what we've established so far is that as long as you as a leader are specifying what you want done, that's not micromanaging. Micromanaging comes in when you start telling people how to do things. As long as you're on the what, you can be very specific about the what. It's not micromanagement. And why do you get accused of being a micromanager? Because the second part of this is accountability. People don't like to be held accountable. We like to be judged on our intentions. I meant to do that. I tried to do that, not on our actual results. And yet we tend to judge other people on their results. So when we get down to accountability, then there's two kinds. There's results. Did I get the thing done? And then there's activity. Did I do the thing that ideally leads to that result? And some things are more or less connected. We've talked about the sales example where it's pretty connected to say 30 calls will get you 3 appointments. There's this 10-to-1 kind of overtime type ratio. Not every 30 calls gets 3 appointments, but in general, there's a 10-to-1 ratio. Something that might be very unconnected on the activity side, which is I want 10-minute response time on my customer service. That may or may not result in a 4.8 average rating, but we don't control the rating. That's what the customer gives us. We control the activity, the response time. So we're going to focus on that response time. In the first example, the calls versus appointments, it could kind of go either way. If the person prefers to be judged on their activity, great. If they prefer to be judged on the results, also works. But for the customer service, you probably only want to focus on the activity because the result is so much out of your control, what people give you as a rating. And then the development example was how many hours it might take to deploy a feature. Well, I really needed the feature, the result, regardless of kind of what the activity is. So I'm probably going to lean as a leader toward getting accountability around, we agree we're going to ship this on this date, right? Regardless of how long it takes. So now that leads to the last piece of the puzzle, which is what if they don't? What if it doesn't happen? What if we don't have the activity, or what if we don't have the results? And to step back from that one step is there's only 2 outcomes that are acceptable once you have accountability. So you as the leader have defined the what, you're going to let them do the how because you don't want to be a micromanager, but there's going to be accountability, either results-based or activity-based accountability. There's only 2 things that are acceptable once we have accountability. And that is we do it, we get either the result or we put in the activity, or we communicate ahead of time. And this is where accountability tends to break down is we allow, oftentimes leaders will allow a third option, which is I didn't get it done and I didn't tell anybody. And that has to become unacceptable in your business. You as a leader need to demand that one of 2 things happen. When we agree you're going to ship a feature on Tuesday, either you ship that feature on Tuesday or you tell me before Tuesday. Don't tell me if it's supposed to ship at noon on Tuesday at 2:00. Go, oh, hey, by the way, I didn't ship that thing. What are we going to do about it now? Now it's late. Now we're scrambling. Now we're doing damage control. I need to know it's not going to ship as soon as you figured out it wasn't going to ship, which was probably Thursday or Friday. You're like, the track I'm on right now, not going to ship by Tuesday. You got to raise your hand and go, hey, not going to have the result we're looking for. Can we renegotiate the deadline? Can we get more resources? What do we got to do? But you've got to give your leader and leaders, you have to require and demand of your teams that they inform you ahead of time so that you can figure out a response and we can still either hit the deadline or move the deadline. but know what's going to happen. So hit the result or the activity is the best answer. Like I said, I'd make 30 calls. I made 30 calls. Perfect. I said I was going to respond within 10 minutes. The metric shows we responded within 10 minutes. Perfect. But if not, we've got to give notice ahead of time, because leaders, you can't fix things after the fact. All you're doing is damage control. It's so reactive instead of proactive. So you've got to train your teams, hey, hit it or tell me ahead of time you're not going to hit it so that we have time to do something about it. And those can be the only two acceptable responses. And that's a huge challenge in my experience. People just hope for the best. So on Thursday, it's feeling like, I don't think this is going to ship Tuesday, but I hope it does. I don't want to raise the flag yet. And so I'll just try. And then at 9:00 Tuesday morning, they're like, okay, there's no way, but it's so close. What are they going to do about it? I'll just do my best and deal with it later. That's not a good result for your business. Or setting appointments. I didn't make my 30 calls. Well, you knew you weren't on pace to get your 3 appointments and you hadn't been making your 30 calls. And so you need to raise your hand and say, hey, a bunch of things are coming up that are going to prevent me from making 30 calls. Hey, leader, help me reprioritize my list, bring in more resources, take something off my plate, whatever's got to happen so that I can hit my 30 calls. But don't wait until the end of the week. And we look at the reports in the sales meeting and go, it doesn't look like you made 30 calls. Oh yeah, this and this and that. Like that just doesn't go well for anybody. The leader doesn't have anything to do about it now. The week's already over. We already didn't make our 30 calls. And you say, well, we'll make 30 more this week. Well, especially in sales, it's the consistency of the calls that matters, not necessarily the volume. So it's like sleep. Like you can't say, well, I'm not going to sleep for 2 days, but then I'll sleep for 24 straight hours. And like, no, you need like our food, right? You can't go like, well, I'm not going to eat for a couple of days and I'll just eat a massive meal, like, or weight loss, right? I won't work out at all for 2 weeks and then I'll work out for like 7 hours. Like, no, it's that consistency that you need. And that's what you need with sales calls. So after the fact, not much we're going to do about it as a leader. So leaders demand that your team either hit their marks, do what they've been accountable to do what they said they would do, or tell you ahead of time so we can work together to fix it. This brings up a question of trust. The main reason people don't want to raise their hand and say, I need some help, is they don't trust their leader. They think they might be judged. They might be accused of being incompetent. They don't want to be embarrassed. They're afraid they're going to get yelled at. All these kinds of things that you as a leader need to make sure you're building a relationship with people and saying, listen, things happen. I need to know about them so I can help you, not yell at you, not get mad at you, but help you. So tell me ahead of time, and then we'll work together to fix it. Now, if this becomes a problem over time, we got to say, is there a mismatch with your role? Do you need more training? What exactly is going on? But I can't fix things I don't know about. And you coming up after the fact with failure after failure on things you're accountable to, I can't work with that. So leaders demand that your people either hit their marks or tell you ahead of time, and have accountability around either a result or an activity, depending on what you're asking for. And make sure you don't micromanage by not just giving the what, but also the how. Let your people have the fun part, which is, how are we going to do this? That's what people are creative and people are wired to do. The what is totally within your rights to define. Now, again, you want to be collaborative with an experienced teammate, but figure out the what. That's the leader's job. Here's what needs to happen. How it gets done, that's the fun part. That's why you have teammates. That's why you have people who are creative and can solve problems. Let them figure out what. So don't let yourself be accused of being a micromanager. I mean, don't actually be one by telling people how to do things. But then when people say, like, you're micromanaging me, like, well, is it that, or are you just pushing back against accountability? And do we just have to get clear about what you're accountable to? And then when they need to be accountable, make sure they're getting it done or letting you know ahead of time. So hopefully that helps. I know leaders struggle with being accused of being a micromanager, but I think it's often mislabeled, but people do it because nobody wants to be one. And so if you get called in micromanager, like, okay, yeah, just do whatever you want, whenever you want. I think people think that might be the result, but that can't be the result, because that doesn't move us forward. That doesn't build our team. It doesn't serve our customers, and it doesn't help our business. Okay, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me on the Clarity Advisor Show.
Thank you for listening to the Clarity Advisor Show. Clarity Advisors is a speaking, training, and consulting firm specializing in helping you simplify your sales and operating systems to improve efficiency and grow your profits. Connect with Clarity Advisors today to learn more about how they can help you improve communication and get your team aligned and engaged for greater success.